We've all heard the horror stories, and it's hard to not wonder whether or not the field is oversaturated, right? I've seen over 800 applications for a single instructional design job. I've seen forum posts where people are applying to over 200 jobs without a single interview. So what's that say about the state of the field? In this video, we're going to explore that. I'm going to share with you some updated data that I've collected, and we're also going to look at some modern strategy for the current job market and what you can do to stand out. So I had these same fears about the field when I was getting into it back in 2017. At the time, instructional design was topping all of these best career lists because of the work-life balance and the pay. New master's programs were popping up like constantly, so it felt like new instructional designers were getting like churned out left and right. And I wondered, I was like, how many instructional designers does the world really need? Like, this feels like such a niche field. So, you know, with so much popularity of the field at the time back in 2017, is there going to be any opportunity for me by the time I graduate a year and a half later? So that was my fear. It was amplified a little bit hearing my master's degree professors talking about how they had used these skills decades ago to pay off their houses, and they had never, went more than a week or two unemployed. So I was like, on one hand, that sounds great. It sounds like these skills are in demand, but I also had that fear of like, is the golden era for this stuff like gone, and it's going to be a lot harder now that this field is more popular. Turns out that was not the case. And I think part of the reason for that for me was because I reached out to a lot of the people who were successful in the field, who were running good freelance businesses or working at, companies like Amazon. And I was like, talking to them about my fears and my concerns. And they told me it doesn't matter how many new people are getting into the field, as it's all going to come down to the quality of my portfolio. So if I have a good portfolio that's going to get people's attention, it's going to help me open doors and get the opportunities I want to get. So I took that to heart, and I spent probably thousands of hours on my portfolio site over the year and a half of my master's program. And they were right. So I was able to, create a really successful freelance business, make six figures right out of school. And I started sharing that with people. So that was my experience. The portfolio made all the difference. And I was still really scared I wasn't going to find work. So these same conversations are happening back in 2017. And since then, the field has grown a ton, right? There's so many more instructional design jobs right now. The field also has a ton of room to grow. There's always going to be demand for people who can upskill entire workforces or entire organizations. So if you're able and capable of doing that, there's going to be demand for you. And portfolios still make all the difference, right? So this has been my business basically for the past 5 years, is helping people build these portfolios and land roles. And it's still night and day, people with a strong portfolio applying and people without a strong portfolio applying. So let's see what the field is thinking right now. So I have a mailing list of around 20,000 people on it. I had a survey open for around a week, and around 270 people responded. It was a mix of people who are trying to become IDs, people who are working as IDs, hiring managers, and it's a mix of people who are actively looking for work and people who are happy in their current role. So we've got a list, and we're going to get their perspective on the job market. So this was one of the questions: how would you describe the current ID job market? And the most popular response is that it's competitive, but possible to succeed with the right approach. A fifth of the people had no opinion. Almost a fifth of the people felt that there were too many candidates and not enough roles. So that's what we're really addressing here. And then some view it as, fair, some view it as growing. So I'd say I view it as competitive, but with the right approach, very possible and almost inevitable to succeed. It might take a few months, but that's my understanding of the job market. I followed this up with a question about what shapes your perspective of the job, your perception of the market. And this was like a select all that apply. So half the people said that their job search experience and the number of applicants versus job postings were like the biggest ones. And then a close third is what they're seeing in online communities and on social media. So I'd be curious to know how that resonates with your experience. If you want to drop a comment and let me know like what's shaping your perception of the market. But yeah, I think those are the big ones. So let's look at the facts, right? So, there's anecdotal evidence, there's, rejections that you might be getting when you apply, but our field's in a pretty good spot. So the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the closest thing we've got for instructional design is this training and development specialist entry, and 12% job outlook over the next 12% growth from 2023 to 2033. That's a pretty solid expectation, right? Much faster than average. And then whenever we look at job listings, right, there's hundreds of new jobs every week, depending on where you look. So if we just look up instructional designer on LinkedIn, we can do the last 14 days. And, over 100 jobs here. Apple's hiring, small universities, healthcare companies. So you can go through here just by looking up the straight instructional designer keyword. There's constantly new roles getting posted. Same thing on LinkedIn. So if you look up instructional designer jobs in the past month, there are 500 of them, right? So we're in a good spot with the number of roles that are getting posted. Remote roles too. I can't even begin to tell you how many more remote roles there are and hybrid roles in the instructional design space today than there were when I was getting into the field back in 2017. That's a big part of the reason why I went the freelance route, because I was like, I really want the flexibility to work from my laptop. There was like the remote roles back then were like, a needle in a haystack. But here it's like, if you have your heart set on a hybrid or remote role, like you can land that quite reliably. It's more competitive, of course, and it's going to need your application materials to be even better, but very possible. We're going to get into some different keywords that you can use to open up even more roles a little bit later. But yeah, like there's no shortage of jobs, to say the least. And then career transitioners are consistently landing roles. So these are people with no instructional design experience. I mean, I've worked with dozens of them over the past year alone. And yeah, when people go through the process, spend the months it takes to upskill and build a strong portfolio website, 10 out of 10 times they are landing roles successfully in the ID field. So the opportunity is there. It might not be as easy as it once was, especially, and it might be frustrating if you're already in the field and you have experience and you've been doing this job for years, and then you're back on the market and you're losing roles out to people who might be transitioning, who, put together a portfolio. I could see how that would be really frustrating. But yeah, it's frustrating, right? It does take more work to get hired now, but it doesn't mean that it's like impossible or the roles aren't there. So if you can make the space and do have the availability to, make sure you're showing off those Storyline 360 skills, e-learning dev skills, and can back it all up with learning science on a well-designed portfolio, you're going to be doing pretty good. And I just want to emphasize this piece. So, I see people get discouraged a lot by like the number of applicants for certain roles, but a large number of applicants is not equal to a large number of qualified applicants with strong portfolios. So my team put together this graphic. So thanks, Nathan, for bringing this together this week. But I think this kind of visualizes what I've been saying to help reassure people for the last 5 years. When people have this concern, it's like, even though you might see 800 applicants for that role, maybe 5 or 10% of them have industry portfolios, and maybe half of those portfolios are good enough to help them get hired and move further in the process. So that 800 turns into 40 really fast, which is still a lot. And right, those are going to be for the most coveted roles. But yeah, right. When you're comparing yourself, how am I going to get this role over the 800 other people that applied? Just remember, those 800 people might not have done the work that you've done to build your portfolio and tailor your resume and prepare for that interview. So as long as you're doing those pieces, your odds are way better than 1 in 800. Also, the forums, right? So 43% of the people said they shaped their perspective of the market on the online forums, and that can be a dangerous game, right? So social media is not an accurate reflection of what's going on in the job market. So we have the spaces like Reddit or anonymous spaces where the most negative stuff rises to the top, and people are commiserating with each other around applying for hundreds of roles and not landing any interviews. So, and then on the other side of that, you have spaces like LinkedIn where you have stories from people who, landed a role within 2 months with no portfolio, and it was easier than ever, and they applied to 10 jobs. So you're going to get two, very different spectrums depending on the different communities that you're a part of. Reality is going to be somewhere in the middle, right? So what does it actually take to get hired? Obviously, without a strong portfolio showing off these in-demand skills, it's going to be a bit like playing the lottery. And yeah, you want to make sure that if you do have a portfolio, it's not working against you. So you don't want it to be like a teaching portfolio or like an academic portfolio. Or I see some portfolios sometimes where people show off like photography and artwork and like maybe a couple of e-learning projects thrown in. Those kind of portfolios aren't going to be the ones that help you get hired really effectively. So you want like a really tailored, targeted ID or e-learning portfolio. You want to make sure your resume is at least tailored for the instructional design field, right? So use the right keywords, like you adjust the language that you're using for how you talk about the stuff that you've done in the past. And then even better, if you can tailor your resume for the exact role that you're applying to. So that could take a little bit longer in the beginning, but once you get comfortable with that, it can really help you land more interviews. And then this is the other piece of it, applying to 10 to 15 roles every week. Okay, so steadily applying, right? We don't want to be applying to, 1 or 2 roles a week. You're probably not going to land interviews that way. Or applying to like 30 plus roles per week. That's going to be pretty rushed, and you're probably not spending as much time as would be good to make sure your resume is tailored and you're putting enough effort into each application to actually warrant a response from the company. So if you are applying to 10 to 15 roles every week with your portfolio and a tailored resume and you're not landing interviews, something is wrong and you want to dive deeper into that versus continuing to apply. So, right, like within 4 weeks, you should probably have an interview, maximum 6 weeks. But if you're consistently applying over 4 to 6 weeks and not finding success, it's not going to be worth your time most likely to continue applying. You don't want to just keep playing the lottery, so to speak, right? If you have this stuff in place, you will be consistently landing interviews. So yeah, if you or someone that you know in the ID space is struggling to land interviews, either the portfolio isn't working for them or they're not applying to enough roles. In my experience, almost every time that's the case. They might have a decent interview, or a decent resume, they might have some ID experience, but again, it's going to be hard to land interviews over, potentially dozens of people applying for the role with a good portfolio. And then job titles, right? I want to throw this in here for y'all who might be on your job search, like just to see how much stuff opens up when you use these different terms. So these are the 3 biggest ones right now, I think: instructional designer, e-learning developer, learning experience designer. A learning consultant doesn't seem to have as much these days. And then you can look for the keywords themselves. So, right, we have instructional designer and we have 100 plus jobs. If we look up like instructional design as a keyword, this is going to bring back thousands most likely. So in the last 14 days, over 2,000 jobs. Now, they're not all going to be the exact job you want. Like, these are all, learning experience related. These are good. Honestly, a lot of these are looking good, but you might get some teacher stuff thrown in here. But yeah, and then let's look up like articulate storyline, for example. If you've been building your storyline skills and you're comfortable with that, this will help us find all the jobs where this is a useful skill. So you're going to get a lot of instructional design stuff too, but let's see how many people want people with storyline skills in the last 14 days. All right, 50 plus, not too shabby. And then you can do similar stuff on LinkedIn. I want to look up like learning experience designer too, because that's a popular keyword for these roles. And let's see. It looks like it's still just showing mostly instructional design stuff, but you'll see these learning experience designer ones mixed in. So if you're interested in this and you want to look at roles together and like look at the actual job listings and see what goes into that and like what kind of candidate they're actually looking for, I am hosting a free Apply With Me workshop. Where we're gonna be together live. I'll be sharing my screen. You can, share links to job posts you want to look at together. And we'll go through the bullet points of the required experience. We'll share more tips like this on how to best search for roles. So if you're interested in that, we're doing it live in 2 days from when this video goes live. And I'll share the link to register for that in the description. But yeah, so that should help a little bit. I just want to let y'all know, right, the field isn't going anywhere. I personally think the golden age for instructional design is yet to come, right? Once it's a household word that people know, at least in the corporate world, like right now, most people still don't know about instructional design. So I think it's such a powerful field where as an instructional designer, you can amplify and multiply the skills and the productivity of the people around you. And that is really, really valuable for companies. They realize it. That's why the field has grown so much recently. So yeah, the field is safe. We're not going anywhere. Tons of new jobs pop up every month. There are, of course, a lot of people applying and transitioning. But if you have a strong application and a strong portfolio, you're going to most likely succeed within a few months of applying once you have that in place. So maximum 6 months, but generally a few months is what it takes once you have a strong app together. So like I said, if you do want some extra help, we will do that Apply With Me workshop on May 8th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. The replay will go live on the YouTube channel, but you can register with that with the link below. And if you would like some one-on-one support with everything from your portfolio projects to your portfolio, to your resume, to interviews, all of the above, we are opening up the first cohort of our Peck Academy program next week. So if you want to join that wait list, here's the website for it, peckacademy.com. Again, this is our boot camp kind of turned into this, so it's more powerful than it was before. And yeah, you know, we have the extra reassurance here where if you don't land a role within 6 months of getting hired or of graduating, we will refund 100% of the tuition it takes to join this program. So that's how confident I'm in the system. And by the system, I mean, you know, just doing the work, creating a strong portfolio, getting feedback on it, having a solid resume and applying. It works 99% of the time. It has been working since 2017, and I don't see it not working anytime soon. So it works. The field, you know, there might be more people transitioning into the field, but the opportunity is definitely there. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. I hope to either see you at that live event in a couple of days or see you in the first cohort of our academy. See you in the next video.